Welcome back, everyone. You're talking with Peter from Collectors Company, and we're here today with Moamin, or M to his friends. M, why don't you tell us what you did over the weekend?
I played Hatchhyack, aka Dr. H, as a PhD, if not the, but among the despised leaders in the game. So essentially, I'm not going to explain really what it does because I think everyone knows what Hatch does just because they're hating it so much. But I am going to point out a few things only because it's important in this deck list. I've two things about reading this leader constantly, all the time, is Hatch hates two things. It hates boss monsters and it hates unisons. So if you remove them from the game, you're set for the game essentially. It's also good to remember that in essence, if you summarize the leader has an inbuilt Nimbus. Another thing to remember is that it does say you can't play non-black battle cards, but it doesn't say you can't put them in the deck. So not unlike the universe trait. So if you want to run draw apes or even play a completely different colored unison, it is possible, but questionable if you're going down that path. So it's a good piece of information to know, just in case future sets do release like generic non-black good cards that I can activate from drop or warp. Unfortunately, as of now, we don't have a massive pool of cards like Sane Instincts to currently benefit off. So the reason why I chose this leader, other than being my favorite black leader in the game, let alone how cool the Ghost Warrior archetype is, the leader single-handedly stops turn 2, turn 3 kill aggressive decks. It's quite obvious. For that reason, another reason, and the primary reason, is I've noticed something in the meta. Decks like Golden Freezer, Red Sin, Supreme Kai, Gogeta GT, etc. They all have one thing in common. They excessively draw a lot. After placing life and drawing, you roughly have like 36 cards left in deck. And for example, Red, for example, they take another 6 searching for ball. They go on down to 30, they draw 2 or 3 cards every turn. Gogeta GT constantly draws off their combo power and whatnot. So what I thought to myself, why don't I just make that fasten the process for them and just play Hatch Mill? I don't own a Jinimba deck, another question that people have asked me. I've seen it played as well, and I've seen it struggle against those decks. It doesn't have an inbuilt defense like Hatch has. So Hatch, in a sense, is a safer mill deck. Now you could only imagine how strong Jinimba would be if it had an inbuilt flying numbers. Most Hatch players I see, they just play like good black cards dot deck. That's the way they play it. It doesn't work. It's too much clutter. You're doing too many things at once, not enough focus. So I came up with a game plan, which is important, and I said at the beginning of the deck list, I stuck to it. I removed two things. I removed the big boss monsters and unisons, and I focused primarily on mill. So literally forget about swinging into life, forget about warping your opponent's hand, forget about beating down your opponent constantly, forget about anything that has nothing to do with them milling and removing big boss monsters and unisons. I've won games in testing. I think I won over the weekend where my opponent was on 7 life the entire time and I've just milled them out. So that's the reason why I chose this leader.
I'm very glad I didn't verse you on the weekend.
So we'll go straight into the deck profile. So I'm going to explain this deck in chronological order of why I chosen certain cards and how they have like combinations together, the synergy they have together as well. So the first card in the deck is Unison of Choice, probably the only unison you play, SS4 Bardock. I'm not going to be explaining the cards, I'm just going to explain why I run them. Again, no explanation needed. Going first, majority of the time, this is coming down turn 2. It's fueling my hand with more negates, with more removal, with more resources I have at my disposal. Now you ask, what's this got to do with milling? Well, this is like a power box which helps me ignite the next card. The next card being Sin Shenron, Negative Energy Explosion. Probably my favorite card in the deck and a core part of your mill strategy. It has Deflect, Barrier, Double Strike, and Blocker. It's hitting the board. The auto is irrelevant, but the Activate main is what makes it crucial in this deck. For Spirit Beasting 1, where a Unison comes into play, your opponent mills 1 card. This also restands. So if you don't have it's important to remember that if you don't have a Unison, this card is a deck card in the deck or in your hand, and I see myself charging it or just using a discard footer. Another thing to remember, again, Unisons are the problem for this deck. Before, Boonison was limited. As a matter of fact, any Unison that stuck on board and was generating for my value for my opponent was an issue for Hatch. This outright is a Unison killer. I stuck to the game plan. I forgot about my opponent's life. I just removed what Hatch hates. Unisons. For essentially Spirit Boosting once, Double Striking Taboo, that's 2 markers gone, Spirit Boost, Restand, Swinging Taboo, the Boonison is dead. Luckily, there's only one Boonison running around these days in each deck, and that's enough, and we're safe. So we stuck to the game plan. We forgot about anything else other than the mill aspect, so Spirit Boost to mill, and remove their Unisons. However, if their Unison had draw capabilities, I'm letting them keep it for a short amount of time, making their mill win con come much sooner for me. I'm controlling the Unison's markers with this card though. That's what I'm doing with my leader, with the Unison swing, with this card, with my Sin. Just in case, in the long run, the Unison does become a nuisance, and I can just swing into it and just kill it as I please. Having 2 of these on board, 99% of the time, I'm winning that matchup. I've done it in testing. My first game, round 1 at regionals, I won my first game just milling 2 cards. Having 1 is equivalent to a Jinimba leader because you're essentially milling one card my turn, 1 card my opponent's turn. Having 2 is better than a Jinimba leader because it's 2 cards per player turn. So I'm essentially blocking, Spirit Boosting with my Unison, Restand. Once my turn, once my opponent's turn, they're milling out much faster than you two. Again, all I'm doing is sticking to the game plan. Now you're probably wondering, if this is sticking to the game plan and this is so equivalent in your so crucial in your deck, why you run it at 3? I don't, but we'll get to that at the end.
Truly a horrendous thing to verse.
The next card in the deck. Probably the most hated card in Hatch, and what made Hatch possible to play is this.
Oof.
Oceanus. It just ends turns. This card is that good that it's run in Golden Freezer builds, in Bulma builds, Crimson, before the leader got banned. Excuse me. And if they're not even running it in the full Crimson build, it's going in sideboards against yellow. Again, no explanation needed. If your opponent wishes to swing, mill for first. Stick into the game plan. Majority of the time, that attack isn't going through anyway, and if they choose for it to go through 1 attack or 2 attack, mill, stick into the game plan. Quite obvious there. Now I'm going to jump straight to the secret of choice for the deck, and you probably will find this out. I think many people do. But I play BSD, so I play Blacksmith Dragon. Again, it's sticking to the game plan. Running Blacksmith, it's an old card, but it's still viable. And you're probably wondering, why don't you run Cooler? Like, it's still like it's heavy, it ruins the opponent's hand, it hinders their ability to play the game, whatnot. First of all, I don't own a copy of Cooler. Secondly, even if I did find one to borrow, I'd still run this. Why? Because of yellow decks. Let alone Golden Freezer is troublesome for Hatch already. Golden Freezer has access to Cold Bloodlust, Yellow has access to Death Blaster, and whatnot. So if I play the Cooler Secret and it gets its skills negated, Cooler now just becomes a double strike blocker, and I don't even remove their hand. Like that doesn't. It's useless now for the remainder of the game. It doesn't fit the game plan also. So we're doing mill and we're removing big boss monsters. If Smoke gets negated and ends up living for one more turn, I can just activate its activate main skill again and make my opponent walk the last 7 cards, or just walk 7 cards in general from the top of their deck to their wall. I'm always playing BSM when I know it's safe to do so though. And because my opponents, when they see black decks, automatically assume like Tumble or Cooler is being run, they don't expect Black Smoke to drop and mill the rest of the cards in their deck. So what's won me so many games, like it's not even funny.
It's very true. It's such a powerful card, and there's just so little that actually stops it now that God Sealing's gone.
The next card doesn't stick to the plan, but it's a crucial part of the plan. It's Trunks Power Seeing Time. Just in case you do mill Blacksmith off your leader, this is the only card that could get it back. But the only reason it's in the deck. If I see my Blacksmith, however, and I've awakened, I'm charging this card, I'm comboing it, it's discard fodder for negates, etc. Now, it's important to know one thing. If you lose your secret, when you're trying to gain it back with Trunks, the permanent of this card says you need to have 12 or more cards in your drop arrow for you to use the activate main. So when you do add it back to your hand from Trunks, you need to make sure that you can dump your hand the same turn before you slap down Smoke Dragon for game. So that's an important thing to remember. Not many people pick that up. Also, this is the only Overwhelm in the deck that we play. Even though we have other cards that do have Overwhelm, this is the only card we're Overwhelming, only because we need to see this back. Now we've discussed the mill strategy of the deck, we're going to get into the defensive tools, and we're going to get into the removal tools, so what Hatch hates. First card, from the Realm set, Crimson Hero Strike. For 1 energy, again, we're going to get straight to the point, this removes high cost any battle cards. If there's a card that you don't want there that's problematic, this helps combat that problem. Alternatively, if you know your opponent is only going to be swinging with their leader turn 1 and turn 2, for 1 energy, you live the battle, you draw 1, replace itself, stay at high life, control the pace of the game, until you gradually make your opponent mill. Next card, more removal. Max Power Kamehameha. Identical to Crimson, but in the form of a negate. It removes a battle card greater than your opponent's energy. Again, Red Sin, Kumba, 21. Anything that plays big boss monsters early, you survive their turn, come back to you, and the monster goes bye-bye. I run 2 copies, one for removal, and I need to see them early as well. One for removal, and one for the negate aspect to recycle it back to hand. Also, this has great synergy with the next card that I'm going to reveal. Supreme Kai of Time. So Max Power single-handedly makes this card live in your hand. This helps remove problematic boss monsters again that don't have barrier. It also stops 2 attacks. So you can negate the lower cost card first, and if they've got a boss monster on the board, you could just remove it. You can just warp it, save yourself from an additional lethal attack, and when it comes back with the skill negated, it's ready to be removed during your next turn. Now, speaking of Kai, another card that sets up Kai in your hand is Finn. So this is essentially just helps clear whiteboards. You don't want your opponent having whiteboards in game in case they gain value from it. It's good against 21, good against Red Sin, good against Yellow Sin, problematic white blue boards. And I'll also show you a nice nifty combo with this card in a second too. It doesn't get around barrier, and it also lets your opponent choose the card they want to keep, which is no problem. The reason why it's not a problem is because of the next card. Dream and Salsa. If your opponent doesn't pay attention to this, and I've cleared up their small cards, the small battle cards, without barrier with Finn, and or even if they're swinging with a double striker or a triple striker, if they forget that Shroom and Salsa is in my warp, I've even updated them, which I've done majority of my games at regionals and in testing, well, not in testing once they figured it out. I've allowed them to think they're essentially pushing for game with that 1 battle card they have. I'll pay 2 energy, combo 2 cards, and play this card from my warp. Now, we don't care so much about the warping a card from their hand aspect of this. It's usually just removing that last battle card. Even if it has barrier, this ignores barrier. So for those situations that get really difficult for Hatch, and even if you just want to bait them out, you can just play this. It never came up at regionals, but it has so many times in the past. I used to have this at 2, but I'm now running it at 1, and luckily I did because it just didn't come up. Now that nifty combo that I'm talking about. So the combo is, I call this if you bought Regeki off Wish.com. Thing clears up their boards under the assumption they don't have barrier, and then when that last card, majority of the time they're choosing the big boss monster or something that's problematic, I'm going to play this, and I'm going to clear up that last monster too. Again, the goal is to remove your opponent's big boss monsters, their unisons. Don't even swing into the leader unless you absolutely need to, and just mill them out. So yeah, Regeki if you bought it off Wish.com. Next card, again, removal, sticking to the game plan. Game plan 1 is mill, game plan 2 is removal. We don't overwhelm him, like I said, we don't overwhelm him in this game, in this deck. Just another card I can send to my warp with Max Power Kamehameha, and playing from my warp if I need to remove a potential threat. Never came up, it's there if I need it. The only difference is between this and Shroom and Salsa, even though they both cost 2, is Broly lets me choose the card that I want to warp. This one your opponent has to choose, but again, both good cards, both situational. Speaking of sticking to the game plan and removing big boss monsters, sticking a card from the archetype itself, Slug Ghost Warrior. More removal, also just in case games do drag on very long, this is your survival tool. Ghost Warrior Slug, you bottom deck 3 cards and just free play Slug. I don't even swing with this unless it's absolutely necessary into like the leader, just in case I can push the game, which never happens. Never came up at regionals. I'm swinging into Unison. I'm swinging into some minor board presence that I want to remove, and then straight after that, even if I don't want to swing, I'm activating its main immediately to remove that big threat. I have seen some builds, Hatch builds, run this at 3, but this is essential in this build, and I run it at 4. You want to see this. It sticks to the game plan. Why would you waste a max power, a hero strike, or even pay 2 for Dark Volley when, in essence, this does exactly what those cards do for free. This is really good against Red Sin if they haven't given their big boss barrier turn 3 or 4. If I see this, that's one less big boss monster I have to worry about. They've got 3 left. Next card, Petrification. The best black negate in the game. This just stops 2 attacks in 1 turn, similar to Kai. Even though technically it doesn't stick to the gameplay in terms of removing a boss monster, it's somewhat stopping a lethal attack and even activating skills. Sometimes removing skills is far better than an attack going through and that boss monster's auto-triggering. It stuns their boss monster, ignoring barrier, which is important to know, ready for me to remove it next turn with whatever I see fit in my hand. I have stopped 2 of Sin's boss monsters with just one of these cards.
Such a powerful negate, and have to appreciate the foiling there.
Thank you all. Next card. Almost running almost all black decks. Probably the simplest negate for a very long time. Son Goku making an entrance. Again, no explanation needed. It's a cheap negate that can be recycled with Power Burst. Because we can't token negate in this deck, because tokens are considered like non-black cards for Hatch to play, we have to resort back to the old classic Power Burst. It's still excellent. Why is it excellent? Because it recovers your Son Goku making an entrance, essentially another negate. If I see this turn 1, an opening hand, this combination followed by Crimson Strike, I just keep negating for turn 1. If I'm going first, they go second, I'm just negating, I'm just defending myself with Crimson Strike and staying at high life. I'm just going to gradually make my opponent kneel. I'm going to build my wall of negates. So yeah, that's the goal. That's the idea behind this.
It's a very oppressive combo, especially later in the game.
It sure is. Okay. Super combo of choice. SS Vegeta Prince Strikes Back. Again, probably a black stable super combo for most black decks. Now I've been asked, if you're staying at high life, or you want to stay at high life, doesn't this card become dead in your hand? Why don't you run the new combo super combo? The only reason being is because of the next card. This is the only valid target that I have in the deck for SS4 Gogeta. So this was the form of removal that I used to have back in the day, probably the only form of removal before I thought of running Truman Salsa into the deck. But there is other forms of removal in the deck, and a really good card that got released we'll discuss next in a second. However, the idea behind this, once I've minimized board presence with my Finn, or just clearing out boards by swinging to battle cards, this bad boy comes out, removing those last few cards on the board, even if they have barrier. Sometimes I don't even utilize all 3 of his attacks. I just want to swing and just restand him. He's walked 2 battle cards for me, he's done his job, he's ready to block during my opponent's turn. Also, I use this as a bait tool. If the game drags on really long, and I go to turn 9, and my opponent's got something that negates the first battle card skills that gets played, I'm usually playing this out, and they're probably going Cold Bloodlust or something else to essentially remove it. Nobody wants to deal a second copy of this card on turn 9. They're removing their counterplay, and straight after I know that they've used up their counterplay, they can't do anything else for the turn. I'm slapping down my BSN SCR, and I'm just milling them out for game.
Oh wow.
Next card. Busted card, and even more busted in Hatch. Hatch struggles, as I said, Hatch struggles against Unison-based decks, or just Unisons in general. Now we've removed our opponent's high boss monsters. This helps remove both of them essentially in 1 card. Again, combined with Finn, this is a board wipe. Under the assumption the battle card is under 7 or less, or even the Unison is 2 markers or less. 3-cost slug used to be a big issue for this deck. Completely stops my Unison straw power, shuts down my super combos. Vegeta Z battle card was also a problem. I couldn't remove it as soon as I want to. Hatch does not want to use up its resources for combo power. This says goodbye to their stresses. I could never kill an Android 17 or 18 Unison because the marks will just go up and up and up and up. And even in SS4 Gogeta Unison, another problem, it's got double striker aspect to it. This goes on. Now you're probably wondering, if this is so crucial and it helps remove those problematic your strategy 2 of removing 2 of the crucial things that Hatch hates, why don't you run more? Again, I do, but I'll get to that at the end of the deck profile. Next card of the deck. Now this isn't somewhat removal. but not is it a negate, but it technically is. So there are optimal choices which I can run in Deborah's spot instead. But I keep this here for a problematic secret rares like Vegeta. This card completely turns off its burn ability. It didn't come up at regionals, but it has so many times in the past. I would sometimes even bait my opponent, bringing my life down to 1. I would not even negate. I just make them believe that you're pushing for game. And then after when I'm at 1 life, they would just comfortably tap 4 energy and then play this Vegeta SCR. Then I'd be like, hold on 1 second, Deborah. I now live. I switch off their burn. And most likely, I'm removing that Vegeta next turn, and then now I can comfortably sit back, control the game, and live till I mill them out. Now, it's important to note that Hatch hates 3 secrets in the entire game. Humber, Beast Gohan, and Vegeta SCR. They all burn. That's 1 less sparking for power burst that I could use, which has cost me games before. Looking back at those matches, if I did have that extra life, I would have won those games. So even though Deborah doesn't fit the theme or the game plan, it doesn't stop Combo SCR, of course, because it's an auto. It does stop Vegeta SCR and Cooler SCR as well, which I haven't had much testing against, and from its multiple swings. Double striker actually doesn't want to take big double strikes, especially for something that can reach down multiple times. And I think Vegeta SCR, I think 2, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 of the top 8 decks had Vegeta SCR in them. So lucky I still have this in the deck. Next card, Spicy One-Off, Kakarot. If I've used both of my max powers, or I've milled them out, which doesn't happen often, but just in case, let's just assume that it does, this helps put my Broly and my Shroom and Salsa into the walk. Again, because we don't overroll, this also helps make Kai alive in my hand. On top of that, unlike max power, this is a 5k combo. Its stats are fantastic. It's got an energy cost of 4, which I can bottom deck with Slug. It has Barrier, Blocker, Revenge. Red Sin struggles against this card. It just puts your opponent's sequencing completely off. Sequencing against Hatch is so crucial, and many people don't know how to time their attacks correctly. This makes decisions a lot more difficult. This puts in the work. Again, why am I running this at 1 if it's that good? I'm not, but we'll get to that at the end. Brainwashed no more. Now that Chomper and Kai are gone, this essentially never came up. I never used this card like I used to before. It was more in case my opponent did counter and push for game, and again, it doesn't have the combo power to live. And opponent needs to respect that Brainwashed is a card. They can't comfortably triple strike and dump for hand. It didn't come up at regionals, but it's come up so much in the past before because of Kai as well and Champa. But now that they're gone, I would consider taking this out. Another spicy one-off, and I get so many questions regarding this card. I love the artwork on this. I do have the SPR. So it's beautiful. I used to run Splintering Mine, but it's too costly in Hatch. I tested with Splintering Mine for such a long time, and only to realize, hold on a second, this is probably better in this current meta. This is cheaper. I don't have to take 2 life. The requirements are easy. Kai of Time runs Saiyans. SS4 Gogeta runs Saiyans. Kamba is an all Saiyan deck. I have about 15 Saiyans in my entire deck. I can meet the requirements of this card. Now, it's important to note that it doesn't say in your drop area. It says both you and your opponent's drop area. This is exceptional against leaders that like to take their own life. Yellow Majin Vegeta, they get down to 1 life. I survive the onslaught of leader attacks in the battle card swings. I am winning next turn. SS4 Gogeta, if they have no cards on board and the unison is dead and I can't stick to my game plan, and I'm forced to apply some pressure to their life, and their life is down to 1, and they Z-awaken to 100k, I don't care. This doesn't bother me. I'm burning that last life. I've seen red decks run Nappa for that burn. This is like the Black's alternative. This is slightly better than Nappa though. If I see myself trying to push for game just because I can and I forget about the mill strategy, which isn't like I always stick to my game plan, but just in case, under the assumption that I do, and I swing into their life and they're on 3 life. One thing to remember is that if they're tapped out and they're on 3 life and they sparking negate, they have to take 2 life. 1 from their sparking, and another 1 off this card's effect. If they're on 2 life and they don't respect this card or they don't know that it's coming out, they're going to kill themselves from 2 life to 1 life because they can't sparking negate. So it's a very good one-off tech. In testing and regionals, there were situations where I could have played this card to finish off a game or 2, but I chose not to, just to play it safe. Again, I've stuck to the game plan. But it's there if you need to see it, if you want to see it. I think on stream, I extended the game longer than I should have because I was versing Majin Vegeta, and I wanted my opponent desperately to go down to 1 life just so I can showcase this card on stream. It didn't come up, and that's why the game went on longer than it should. But yeah, spicy tech. The last card in the deck. Boo, mission accomplished.
There it is.
Black decks run it up. Some black decks run it up. We used to run it at 1. Some black decks used to run at 2. I would never see it running at 3. Hatchhyack runs it at 4. Now, I said before, why am I, if some cards are so good, why am I not running more copies? This essentially gives me those copies. I'm running 5 copies of Black Marseille. I'm running 5 copies of Kakarot. If I need to charge one, I can see a Dabura again. If my opponent, well, most decks run only 4 unisons, and if I've removed one by swinging into it, and I've killed one with Black Smoke, and then late game they bring it out, and it's problematic for me, I can get my Smoke Dragon back. Done. The unison is going. One thing to notice, and a lot of people ask me, is like, how do you beat so and so? Gogeta GT is easy to beat because of this. The mine negates, and like 99% of my deck is now useless if their big boss monster swings into me. I can't negate, I can't activate skills. The only thing that I could do is super combo. So I'm usually taking their first Gogeta attack, their first big boss monster attack, but the second, the third, the fourth, after I've used 1 or 2 super combos, forget about recycling any of these cards or even Oceanus. I'm just recycling my super combos back to my hand. Once all 4 of their boss monsters are gone, I can comfortably sit back and control the rest of the game, and it's tilted in my favor. So this lets me survive that matchup. Another matchup that lets me survive is Jinimba. I used to struggle against Jinimba because Hatchhyack mills itself out in the first 3 turns with its leader skill. Jinimba just makes that process faster for you by milling out. Instead of running 4 copies of Slug, which I want to see in Jinimba, and sometimes I've lost against Jinimba by having 2 cards left in, them having 2 or 3 cards left in deck, this helps me survive. I think in testing, and the player that came 11th playing Jinimba, I played against him so many times, I've recycled the same 6 cards in my deck until I have just probably beat them down or he's milled himself out. So this is just, it's amazing. If I cleared up a board, and they just, again, make a whiteboard, I'm bringing this bad boy back, and I'm wiping that board again. What else? There's so many, and Oceanus as well, which you guys saw me do on live stream. You know what's worse than having 4 Oceanus? Is having 8 Oceanus. Don't hate Oceanus. Hate Fu for bringing this card back. Another card as well, Sin. If I lose my Unison, and I see one really late game, say turn 8, turn 9, whatever it is, I'll pop this guy down for 2, I'll play one of these. This card is probably not going to get removed late game because all the resources have been used to remove the first 2, or even my Gogetas. Turn after, I'm bringing another one of these out, and then I'm milling him out for game. So this is so important, it's not even funny. Again, if you lose your secret and you mill this, it has happened in the past where I've milled both of these. This is bringing back my Trunks is bringing back my secret. This card just it's just amazing. I can't say much about it, but there's just so much to say that I'm speechless.
It's incredibly versatile.
That is the entire deck.
Wow. How many cards does your deck come to?
57.
57. Yeah, makes complete sense for an anti-mill deck. Well, for a mill deck, I should say.
Yeah, for a mill deck. And again, Slug just helps me survive much longer. I'll get into my matchups in a second. Side deck never came up, but it's there if I wanted to see it. 2 Surmountings, 4 Boos, 1 Goku, and 1 Demigra. Again, I don't utilize the side deck as much as I want to. This used to be at 3, this used to be at 4, this used to be at 3 in case I don't see my secret in my deck and the game is just dragging on forever. My secret could be in my life. I'm using this to take life. This, again, is sticking to the game plan, removing problematic boss monsters, never came up except for 1 game. These 2 are in here literally only because I wanted to see if it came up. I'm testing these cards in regionals. Yes, you heard that right. Now that the event is over, I'm pumping this up back to 4. This is going to 3. That's my Z deck. Side deck, I'll leave them for last. Again, the side deck doesn't stick to the game plan. These cards don't help me mill, and these cards don't help me remove problematic boss monsters or unisons. But it's there if I do wish to play them. Not only that, because it's black, this BMS just looks amazing. I love this art. This art is just beautiful. So I run 3 BMS, no explanation needed. Blue hate. Hatch. more board removal in case. Most of the matches that I've had, I've taken out Dark Bowling and I've put in a second copy of Finn, just for those matches when I know they're going white. This is not useful. And just in case I do bump into green, green's not that popular these days, but just in case I do, there's a Dabura for you. These cards don't really stick to the game plan, but it's just there if I want to throw them into the deck for absolutely no reason. But the last 5 cards are what's really important, and my worst matchup is Golden Freezer. The reason why, Golden Freezer utilizes Unisons, or 2 of them that can attack 6 times. Again, H hates that. Another thing is that they have a boss monster, their 5-cost Golden Freezer, I can't remove. Black has no cards, no tools to help remove that card. And if I negate, they're tapping down 2 of my energy, and that becomes troublesome for me moving forward. Nonetheless, even though I can't remove the Freezer, at least I can focus on the Unison, the Gohan Unison. That's what Ultimate Dragon Dark Slane Bullet is for. This, I need to try to make them not attack me with their Unison until it comes back down to my turn. And then I can either mill them out with my secret late game, or I can just pop out 2 Sin Shenrons without even swinging, because the Unison will pop them if they're in rest mode. I'll just keep them in active mode and just make them mill 2 every time if I've got 2 on board. Usually I'm taking the first Gohan Unison swing, the triple attacker, but when they play the second one, when they play the third one, they're not getting the triple attack. And if they do want to make markers down on their Unison to attack, they have to wait an entire turn, because this card just says, you can keep those markers, but you can only attack once for the remainder of the turn. That's essentially 2 extra cards, or even more, that they're milling, because they'll pass to me, I'll probably make them mill a bit, pass back to them, they're drawing for turn, they're using their leader skill to play a card to draw, using the leader skill, they're playing a battle card to draw, using the leader skill to pop that battle card to draw again, get a swing, draw another battle card, draw another card, and Unison marker +1 to draw another card. So they're just milling themselves out. That's the game, that's the idea behind this card. On top of that, the second activate main battle, your opponent chooses one of their cards with an energy cost less than the number of cards in the drop area and sends it to their wall. If I've removed their Unison, because my hatch is a 20k beat stick too, so it's easy to swing into their Gohan Unison, if they're popping down cooler SCR, which I've just let now, even popping down their Super Combo Gohan Piccolo, and they're pushing for game, even just playing any problematic boss monster that I just didn't expect, and they've just dumped their hand, again, this is like a cheaper copy of Schumann Salsa. I'm paying 1. If it's the only battle card they have, it's getting removed.
Wow.
Very, very good card. And the last card, I can't wait to take this out of my sideboard. It's in every single sideboard that I play. I hate turning the tide. It's not a fun. It's not a fun card to play against when you see it. This is the staple in almost all my sides. I usually have this at 2. But I don't know, I had a feeling that I wasn't going to run into turning the tide, and I didn't. So luckily I dropped it down to 1 to have utilize the side deck a bit more. But now that the regionals is over, I'm definitely going to be pumping this up back to 2. Again, I'm not running 2 copies of Jiren. I'm running 6 copies of Jiren because I can cycle it back with 3 mission accomplished.
That's a great point.
That's the deck.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. Well, do you want to talk about your matchups a bit?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to be quick because I know the hatch is a lengthy deck profile itself. Round 1, I versed SS3 Reboot with the Bojack package. I milled him out before time. Even funny thing he did against me is that he had 2. So he played Hit Manipulator. The Unison, is it called Manipulator something?
Oh, Battlefield Manipulator, yeah. The one
Battlefield Manipulator. Yep, he flipped my leader to the front. I didn't care. It wasn't going to he did it twice. It's not going to help stop me from sticking to the game plan. As a matter of fact, I would have almost milled myself out if I didn't recycle my slugs with 2 mission accomplished. Eventually, he gave up. He was just like, oh my god, this is going on for so long, and I made him mill the last 2 cards of his deck, because every turn I had 2, since mid-game, I had 2 Sins, so he was essentially milling 2 cards. It was only a matter of time until he milled out. I had control of the entire time. Round 2, Spirit Bomb deck, their field cards, again, they're milling themselves out for me. I don't recall exactly how I won that matchup because it finished so fast. All I remember is just milling them out. That's the only thing I recall. Round 3, Supreme Kai of Time. Again, they're milling themselves out for me. All I have to do is build a wall, negate every turn. I used all of my turns just to remove all the early big boss monsters, and it wasn't long before I slapped down my secret and ended their pain. Round 4, Starter Margin Vegeta. Now, I've never first started Margin Vegeta. I'm aware what that leader did, but I didn't know what the deck does. And my opponent's camera was incredibly blurry. I couldn't see a single thing. I'm used to I use this game to more learn the matchup, as I controlled the game the entire time and I stuck to the game plan. I eventually milled them out, but it didn't benefit me whatsoever because I really wanted to know what the deck did in case it did come up in future. And Hatch doesn't usually worry about decks that kill turn 2 or turn 3. Round 5 against Mono Red Sin. Again, Red Sin goes down to 36 starting, -6. They're searching for 6 balls. Every turn they're drawing 2 to 3 cards. I'm going to wait essentially for my turn 5. So I went first. If my calculation was correct, and it was, I went first. Essentially on my turn 5, they had 8 cards left in deck. I stepped down my secret, and it was GG. The game ended in about 20 minutes. So yeah, maths is important, people. Round 6. So start on Margin Vegeta, the game that got streamed. It was the lengthiest game. I didn't see what I wanted to showcase. Really wanted to show off more of my deck on stream, even though I had control of majority of the game. I wanted to show how strong the Unison and Sim combination was and how I could make it survive. But yeah, again, my opponent, because my round 4 opponent's camera was blurry and I didn't really learn the deck, I was using this to learn a bit more. So again, I was extending the game a little bit longer just until I knew what it did, just in case they had a card that said the first battle card you play, negate it. I had to make sure that my secret was coming down to finish off the game. And as you saw at the end, I did reveal my secret in my hand, which I had majority of the time. I just didn't want to play it. I could have finished the game much sooner, but I was just waiting for my opponent essentially to use their leader skill to going down to 1 life, negate, and then play Master Saiyan and just kill them, just to make it look cool, but it didn't happen. So I just, it was my choice to extend the game. I shouldn't have. I didn't want to, but yeah, it is what it is. They just moved themselves out and gave up at the end.
We all get it. The rule of cool is very important in this game.
Round 7, Golden Frieza. Again, not the best matchup for many reasons. Unison based, can't remove the 5-cost Frieza. Yellow has access to cooler counter. Deck is just too much of an uphill battle, on top of being cooler secret. So usually in testing against Golden Frieza, I can easily win, it's tilted in my favor for them playing the Gohan Piccolo secret. It isn't an issue for me. In testing it was fine, but now I know what Cooler Secret does. It just instantly killed my hand. It removed all my resources. It's no equivalent to my opponent playing Turning the Tide in a sense. I strongly believe if I did go back and started in an unexpected turn, I think the game would have tilted in my favor. But again, I would have lost it, but I would have put my opponent up a run for their money.
Fair enough.
And that's it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Em, and thank you for giving us a very detailed list and for explaining to everyone exactly why Hatch is something to be feared. I know from personal experience you're definitely the best Hatch player I have ever met. Do you have any shout-outs you'd like to give?
I do have a few shout-outs, but before I do give my shout-outs, I do want to make sure that players to note one thing. Now that Unisons are going, and they're becoming completely dead, moving forward, Hatch just becomes a stronger leader. So it's one leader to look out for. In terms of shout-outs, shout out to all my locals, Cartastic, Next Level Games, and Duff Werribee. If it wasn't for you, top lads, I wouldn't have formulated the deck to be what it is today, because I'm just versing so many versatile decks out there, and I know what's out there, and I knew how to counter them all in this one build. So shout out to you all. Shout out to Tech Games for running a smooth event. And shout out to the Lookout for not just hosting, but having amazing commentary. And shout out to you, Peter, for letting me do this deck profile and just hosting with you.
It was my pleasure, Em. Thank you very much again. Well, everyone, you've heard it. Hatch is the deck to go out and get. I hope you've all had a great time. Have a good night for now. Peace.
Peace.